Hi, I'm Dennis Pollock, and I welcome you to Beat Diabetes, where we discuss ways and means to knock that monster off your back. On today's program, we'll be discussing, among other things, one of the most powerful principles in beating diabetes, and I call it the immersion principle. Okay, well, here's a man who says, I hear people say things like, I'd rather die than stop eating the foods that I love to eat. But what people don't get is diabetes won't just kill you. It will literally torture you and then kill you. Blindness, amputated limbs, kidney disease, heart disease, liver failure, nerve damage, and on and on. Well, I could not agree more. If it was just a matter that diabetes will shorten your life by a few years, let's say you live to be 78 and then die easily and swiftly and without any big hassles except that you die. So you live to be 78 by eating all the junk, or you live to be 82, you gain an extra 4 years by constricting your diet, restricting your diet, and so forth. If it was just that might not be such a bad trade-off. You say, hey, I'll pay the price of 4 years and die 4 years sooner just so I can eat all that I want. But it's not just that. It's the fact that during the 10 or 15 or 20 years going up to the point of your death, you're going to have all kinds of issues. And you're going to have bad health and, as this fellow mentioned, all kinds of complications. I heard a man, Steve Farr, I forget his exact name. His first name was Steve. He's a speaker, Bible teacher. And he talked about how that when you start a sprint, or when runners are about to run a sprint, they're all crouched down in the starting blocks. Their muscles are tense. They just can't wait for that gun to go off because they need that quick start. He said, but you compare that to a marathon, and guys are standing around drinking coffee, laughing, joking. Nobody's crouched down into that sprint beginning. Nobody's in starting blocks. They're standing around goofing off until finally it's time to start the race, and then they go for hours. So he said the reason people don't do it the way they do with a sprint is, with a marathon, it's not really how well you start. It's how well you finish. And I'll have to say amen to that. And that's kind of how life is on a spiritual level, but also on a health level. If you're going to finish limping along and having to go to the hospital every year and having one of your legs cut off and having dialysis and all those other terrible things, it's not worth it. It's not a good trade-off. Like I said, if it's just going to shorten your years by 2 or 3 years or 4 years, you might think that's good, but it's going to do more than that, most likely. So it is worth it. It is well worth it to get your health under control. All right, this one is kind of funny. This person says, in March of 21, I was at the age of 40 and diagnosed with an A1C of 7.3, which is not terrible, but it is definitely diabetes by American standards. Last month, he says, it dropped down to 5.3. I would never have believed in a million years after a health scare like that I would be taking my medical advice, and I don't really like to think of myself as giving medical advice. I just share my story, but the way he puts it, taking my medical advice from a religious Southern American on YouTube. I owe you a debt of gratitude. Thank you, and keep doing what you're doing from Sydney, Australia. Well, he's not the first person to say things like that. I've had a lot of people that say things like, well, I never thought I would be listening to a preacher about diabetes or listening to an evangelical Christian. I have to say, I think God sort of has a sense of humor, because guess what? I never intended to start any kind of a ministry like this or any kind of a YouTube channel like this. In fact, I didn't know what I was getting into when I started. I just started a YouTube channel because I had one particular lady on the wife of one of our board members that encouraged me to do it, and I thought, well, I guess it'd be a good way to get, some information out. I didn't know a thing about YouTube and had no plans for I didn't have any idea how much effort and time would be involved with it. And at first I was just sporadically putting out a video here and a video there. And it just kind of sucked me into the whole thing until it's become a huge part of my life. I kid you not about that. But as I have thought about it and have asked myself the question, how did you ever get here? And what does God have in mind for you? And why is God using this? Because my whole life has been about ministry, my whole adult life, that is. And that's all I've really cared about, was trying to minister the gospel of Jesus Christ and help people learn about the Bible and so forth. So it's like, what are you even doing with this? But I have to conclude God has a sense of humor. And He has placed me in a position where some of you will listen to me where you would never listen to me otherwise. If I was preaching a sermon or teaching a lesson on the Bible, you wouldn't even have any interest in that. And for some of you, I'm the very first evangelical Christian, one who reads the Bible, respects the Bible, loves the Bible, goes to church, sings songs, listens to Christian music. I'm the very first one of my kind that you've ever gotten to know very well. You may have worked with a few, but probably for some of you who are not Christians, I'm the first evangelical you've ever known very well. And you really haven't had much choice because you have sensed that somewhere in all these talks and videos and testimonies and even the little funny skits that Benedict and I do, somewhere in the midst of all that is a truth that can set you free from diabetes. And so I kind of feel like God has put me here to say to the rest of you who are not evangelicals, we're really not that bad. We're not as stupid as you thought we were. We're not a bunch of haters and people that are crude, and we're not all that backward. We're just like you in many respects. In some respects not, of course, because we are strong believers in Christ, but we're not as bad as you've been made to think by some of the news media and others. So anyway, it's kind of funny. He says, I never would have believed I'd be listening not only to a Christian, but a Southern Christian. You one from Texas, of all places. So a lot of people would rather get their advice from California or Oregon or New York. But here you are getting some encouragement to beat diabetes from good old Texas, USA. Well, like I said, I think God has a sense of humor. This person left a comment under the interview I did with a lady named Allison, a lovely lady who gave a powerful story about how she has brought her blood sugar levels down into the normal range. But this person wasn't real happy about the interview for this reason. They said, could you please give us the remedy instead of beating around the bush? I'm listening but not getting exactly what we should do. Well, I hear that a lot, and sometimes people complain, especially about the interviews, because they say, well, I want a diet. I want that person to tell me exactly what to eat and what they eat and give me the steps, step A, step B, step C, step D, give me all the steps. And they don't always do that, nor there just isn't time for one thing. Plus, the testimonies are really more to inspire you than to give you a blow-by-blow, step-by-step account of how you beat diabetes. But guess what, folks? I have uploaded somewhere around 300 videos on YouTube. The information's all there from my channel, and then there's Dr. Fung's channel, Dr. Bernstein's channel, Dr. Sten Ekberg does a great job, Dr. Ken Berry. There's so much good information, so many people that are saying all the right things and all the things you need to hear. So if you're saying, well, you're not filling in all the blanks, all you have to do is just start watching. Some people want to watch one video and find everything they need to know about diabetes and every little meal they should eat and what they should not eat and step 1 and 2 and so forth. It's not going to work that way. You're going to have to invest a little time. But a lot of people, let's face it, a lot of people go to nutrition classes and pay thousands of dollars, and they will sit for hours. A lot of people would go to a seminar that would last 3 days, all day long, 3 full days, if they were convinced it would help them beat diabetes. And here with my videos and some of the other guys that are saying pretty much the same thing, guess what? It doesn't cost anything. All it's going to cost you is some time. And some people are just so stubborn about their time. I heard one people say, well, I just can't give up my precious time to watch your long videos. And I thought, man, you obviously don't want to beat diabetes that bad. If you don't have enough motivation to spend 15 or 18 or 20 minutes watching a video that may help you beat diabetes, then go watch some cute little video with a lot of jokes and so forth that won't do you any good, but it'll entertain you. Because this is not really an entertainment channel. We try to keep it a little bit light at sometimes and don't want to be boring, but this is not really to entertain you. It's to save you from diabetes. And if you don't have 15 minutes of your time or 20 minutes of your time once or twice a week to watch these, well, sorry, but that's not going to change. Really, the principle that I'm talking about here is the principle of immersion, immersing yourself into the truths that surround what it takes to beat diabetes. And it's going to take some time to do that. If you're going to try to dye a white T-shirt purple, you're going to have to leave it in the dye. Not many people dye clothes anymore, but if you were, you'd have to leave it in the dye for a while to let the stain soak deeply into the fabric. And then it'll give it a good hue, a good color. And if you're going to dye your mind with the truth and going to really have the motivation to beat diabetes, you're going to have to spend some time at it. You're going to have to read some books. You're going to have to watch some videos. You're going to have to give some time. Is it worth it? Absolutely. It's 1,000% worth it. Of course it's worth it. What price can you pay for your health? But if you don't have the time to do that, you don't have the motivation. So there's a lot of funny little videos you can watch on YouTube instead. I'll never forget, I was in Ukraine some years ago, and they all spoke English somewhat. Almost everybody in Ukraine does. They get English lessons in high school. But we were among a bunch of young men that were training for ministry. And there was one particular guy, Ukrainian young man, who spoke beautiful English and had almost no accent whatsoever. And I just couldn't help but ask him, I said, how is it you speak English so well and you have almost no accent? He said, well, I actually spent I forget how much time it was, a year or 2 years over in the United States living with a family as an exchange student in the state of Louisiana. I thought, well, I'm surprised you don't have a Southern accent if you were in Louisiana. But I mean, he had a beautiful way of speaking English, so apparently he learned very well. But the principle there was this guy didn't just learn English in high school. He went to America. He went to the U.S. and got immersed in the U.S. culture. He got in a situation where everybody was speaking English, and he picked it up very well. Now, not everybody can do that. As an older person, you probably could go to Russia or Spain or some foreign country, and you still end up with an accent. But as a young man, he ended up with almost no accent at all. But he immersed himself in the U.S. for at least 1 or 2 years, and it did him a world of good. And so if you're going to beat diabetes, you need to immerse yourself. You can't just watch one video and expect to get all the answers, and then you're going to go your way, and you'll have the thing beat. Number one, you won't have the motivation. Number two, you won't know as much as you need to know. If you've recently been diagnosed with diabetes and you've just discovered this channel, let me recommend that you go to our uploads page, which will give you access to every diabetic video we've posted since we began. As you work your way through all our videos, I believe you'll find the help you need. A link to our uploads page is in the description.